It's now been well over 48 hours as I record this since Kyle Van Noy supposedly had a visit with the Baltimore Ravens. There's not a lot of information out there. It's easy to look at the lack of an announcement as a Ravens fan and conclude that no deal is going to get done, that there would have been some type of announcement already. Count me as someone, however, who wishes that the Ravens could bring him on. I watched 5 games of Kyle Van Noy from 2022. Well, I should say, let me be honest. I tried to watch 5 games in order to decide for myself if it would be a good signing. I did watch the 5 games, but to be honest with you, I had my mind made up probably about a game and a half in that I knew, for me at least, that it's an absolute yes. That Kyle Van Noy, even at age 33, looks like a guy who could help this defense. And this defense specifically, I'm looking at this from a Baltimore Ravens perspective, to be honest with you. Uh, why don't the Chargers want him? Well, they have Bosa. I don't know what the deal is with Khalil Mack. I personally think the Chargers made a mistake letting Uchenna Nwosu leave because he had a great season with the Seattle Seahawks. But in any case, I watched the 5 games specifically. Let me be clear. I watched the Chargers' final 5 regular season games of 2022. I want to tell you what I think the film showed, and then get into some comparisons or some contrasts, I guess, really between him and potentially bringing in Justin Houston. To my knowledge, as I record this Sunday night, Justin Houston has not signed anywhere. Like I said, about halfway through the second game, I had already made up my mind that I thought it would be a great signing for a lot of reasons. Let me get into them. Number one, Kyle Van Noy looks like a winner. Just watching the film, he looks like a winner without even knowing his pedigree with the New England Patriots and some of the big time plays he was able to make in late game situations, or late season situations. Excuse me. Number two, he can do everything. Now, I specifically picked the last 5 games because he had a lot of impact statistically during that time. I mean, you can go look up his stats, his game by game stats yourself, and you'll notice that. But upon watching the film, I just saw a guy who, he can play on the left or the right side. He can play inside linebacker, meaning he can line up at inside linebacker. The times when you'll see him line up at inside linebacker here is generally pass rush situations where he's trying to pick a guy and allow a defensive teammate to stem underneath and go through an open rush lane. He can play on the left or the right side. He can get to the quarterback, 5 sacks in the final 5 regular season games of 2022. He can get out and cover the flats, cover the curl, which is generally to be considered the hash area. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I should say the hook is the hash area, especially in light of the fact that Tyus Bowser is injured or unavailable for a certain period of time. I guess let me put it that way. Van Noy to me is an excellent choice to do what Bowser can do and alleviate the need for other guys, Owe and Ojabo, to try to do what Bowser can do. In this defense, Mike Macdonald relies on at least one outside linebacker or edge defender to be able to get out and take good pass drops. And in some cases, we've seen Tyus Bowser cover people man to man, specifically 2021, less so in 2022 because Mike Macdonald doesn't depend on man coverages as much as Wink Martindale did, clearly. Van Noy is physical in the run game. You'll see some clips of that here in a minute. These are all pass drops, or excuse me, pass rushes. He's very good on direct run concepts at him, and I mean he's as good on direct run concepts to him as any linebacker, outside linebacker the Ravens currently have. So I'm talking about Owe, Ojabo, and whoever else we've got out there at outside linebacker as training camp begins. I know Van Noy's 33 years old. I mentioned that once already. But me personally, I don't want Owe and Ojabo dropping out in pass coverage very often at all. As the season goes on, if they have to do it some more, I understand. And I understand the reason why you have to do it at times with each edge defender because you don't want to be completely predictable to the quarterback. It's usually the boundary side outside linebacker or boundary side edge defender that's the guy who's dropping out. And Bowser is just 12 to 15 times better than all of those guys at taking pass drops. Personally, I'd love to see Justin Houston brought back. It's about that time with training camp starting this week. And then I think the first full team practice set for Wednesday. Van Noy played extremely well in these 5 games that I watched. Find me another outside linebacker or edge defender who had 5 sacks in the last 5 games who also forced a ridiculous interception like you saw against the Broncos in Week 18. He played exceptional in Week 18. And oh, by the way, also played exceptionally well against the run during that time. It's a difficult proposition for you to go find a player who did those things, all three of those things. And I would be willing to bet whoever you find who did match those stats and that output probably is getting paid a whole hell of a lot more than Kyle Van Noy would be looking to get paid. Depending on what does or does not happen with Justin Houston. And personally, I can't believe that other teams aren't interested in him. I find it difficult to comprehend how people could look at the film from last year and not want to have Justin Houston as a situational pass rusher, a guy that they could play. My goal, personally, if I was involved in anything there, would be 14, 15 games. And in those 14, 15 games, playing about 22, 23 snaps a game. I think there's some statistical proof that shows Houston has more impact right around that level of workload. 22, 23 snaps a game. Looking at some of the games from earlier in 2022, particularly week 1 and week 2, where he had, I believe, 45 and 53 snaps. I could be wrong. Welcome to go research it if you want. I didn't think Houston was ready for that workload, and I certainly don't think he would be in 2023. And to be real, and I've gone on record as saying this multiple times, Houston doesn't need 40 snaps a game to have an impact. I reflect back on what he did. I'm still talking about Justin Houston in 2022, and I really think it was legendary. While being used as a situational pass rusher in a 4-week time period, Justin Houston had 7 sacks. Talking about from week 7 to week 10. I know this is a Kyle Van Noy video, but I'm leading up to a question for you guys to see what your opinion is. From week 7 to week 10, that's 4 games, and he only played 98 snaps on defense in those 4 games. 7 sacks, 4 games. So to me, a little less than 25 snaps per game if I did my math right. To do it to have 7 sacks in 4 games, that's been done before, don't get me wrong. But to do it on only 98 snaps, I think that's incredible. The plays per sack output there is impossible to replicate. It's an unbelievable statistic for me. The only guy that I can think of last year that matched that type of sacks per plays was James Houston IV from the Detroit Lions. Now, Van Noy and Houston are not the same player. That's why I brought that up and talked about Houston for a while. Personally, I would take either one of them at this time with Bowser apparently not being ready to start training camp because of a non-football injury. I don't think the Ravens can afford both Van Noy and Houston. Just don't. Based on how much money I perceive they have left, particularly after signing Melvin Gordon, but it doesn't sound like that's actually a $3 million contract. Sounds like that's up to $3 million contract. So in any case, I think the Ravens need one of these guys. It may be possible, as much as I like Justin Houston, that the Ravens need a guy like Kyle Van Noy more early in the season because Bowser apparently will not be around for a while. Feel free in the comment section to let me know if I'm overstating the length of time that it sounds like Bowser will be out. Who would you want the Ravens to sign? If you're a Ravens fan, you listen this long. I don't know enough about Bowser's injury. I've been upfront with that. I think it's a knee to judge how much they need Van Noy, to judge how long they need Van Noy. But they clearly do need someone like this. I think he's a extremely active player, very versatile, very smart and experienced, recognizes things quickly. I'm going to let this first play from this run clip go again and just talk about, I haven't really talked about the plays at all. This is incredible awareness and almost unfair to do. It's not a fullback in the backfield. It's a tight end. Doesn't matter who it is. He just dodges around him. I mean, there's plenty of players who do that. Kyle Van Noy still does things like that at 33 years old. I feel pretty sure that if we bring Justin Houston back, he can give you 8 or 10 sacks in limited snaps. I've gone on record as saying that multiple times, including earlier in this video. That would be the draw to bringing back Justin Houston. I don't think they can do both of them. Another one for Justin Houston, and I think this applies to Kyle Van Noy as well. If you had an injury to someone else, Ojabo, Owe, if Bowser was out for longer, both of those guys could give you more reps per game than I'm describing or than I'm advocating for Justin Houston to play. think Kyle Van Noy would be a guy who could play a little bit more per game than Justin Houston, just based on what I'm seeing, at least how he finished the 2022 season. I think Van Noy is the type of guy that could be dormant on the field for 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time, meaning a guy who you don't think is having much impact and then can suddenly explode like he did to finish the 2022 season. Again, I think even though there's different styles of play, Justin Houston, same thing. I've already mentioned it. He had 7 sacks in a 4-week period, and then I don't think had another sack until week 17, I believe. Maybe it was week 18. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I don't think he played week 18 against the Bengals. Who would you advocate for the Ravens to sign just prior to training camp? I do find it hard to believe that there's not multiple teams out there trying to bring Justin Houston in on a mid-level salary or a low-level salary and tell him up front, you're a situational pass rusher. You're not going to be active we want to get you to the playoffs. You're not going to be active 17 games because 17 games isn't just a +1 game situation from a 16-game schedule. I believe that 17 games has that one extra game has an exponential impact on the older players, of which Justin Houston and Kyle Van Noy are. I do think there's other teams out there interested in Justin Houston, and hell, maybe there's news stories about that. I don't have the time sometimes to research that, so feel free in the comment section to let me know if you've heard more than I have. With the lack of information out there for Bowser and his eventual return, what carries the most weight for you? Is it the versatility and the big game experience of Kyle Van Noy? I'd be okay with that if that was someone's opinion. More than what Justin Houston offers, which I think is just the electric, efficient pass rush moves. And he has an ability to play against the run as well. I don't discount that. I just think that what he brings to the pass rush has incredible impact in a small number of plays. I certainly believe the Ravens should seriously look at one of them, depending on their salary situation and what these guys want. That's always a consideration. Does Van Noy or Houston want? I could understand Justin Houston wanting more than what he was paid last year. I think it was $5 million last year, but again, I didn't look that up. In any case, either or of those guys for me works because I don't want to see Oweh or Ojabo out there in coverage as much as we saw Oweh doing so last year. I believe those young guys should be allowed to focus on a smaller set of techniques. If you were to go without Bowser and without a Van Noy, I mean, one of those two guys, or Houston if he is brought back in, has to play out there and be the guy who's dropping out in the flats. It opens up the door for Malik Harrison to play to the boundary as a Sam, and there was times where he did that to efficiently last year. There was times where he played extremely well last year to the boundary as a Sam linebacker, as a guy who could walk back and play inside linebacker in a 4-3 look or walk up and play your edge defender. I think people are far too quick to criticize Malik Harrison and his, I guess you could call it a position switch last year, moving to a hybrid inside linebacker, outside linebacker position, what most people will call a Sam in a 4-3, and that is an accurate term. If you look at the historic use of the term in the 4-3, I would have no problem, with Malik Harrison being on the roster and being relied on. But for me, based on the film I'm seeing, Kyle Van Noy brings a higher level of potential. He brings a lot more versatility and actual ability to cover out in the flats or even in the curl because he has played inside linebacker. For me, if it ain't Justin Houston, I hope it's Kyle Van Noy. But the time is running short. First full practice is Wednesday, and then the stadium practice, which we're all looking forward to, is Saturday. Let me know if you guys are interested in those things. I know I am. I'm going to try to go to the stadium practice. It sounds like it's going to be a great time. And what you think of my Kyle Van Noy, film that I showed you, and the limited, ability that I did break, or the limited amount of time that I did spend breaking the film down for you and describing some of the techniques. I feel like a lot of it is just self-explanatory for you to watch. Appreciate you guys' time. Let me know what you think of the video in the comment section. If you think other Ravens fans might enjoy this, please consider grabbing a link, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.